So, House of Gucci was directed by Ridley Scott and it stars Lady Gaga, Adam Driver, Jared Leto, Salma Hayek, Al Pacino, Jeremy Irons, and it's about Patrizia Regani. I'm mispronouncing names because I'm not Italian. And it's about her as she marries into the Gucci family, and she knows there's a lot of issues in the family, and she realizes she wants more power in the family, so she tries to take means into her own hands. This movie claims it's inspired by real events, and yeah, let's just move on. So this movie seemed interesting enough. I'm always going to be interested in whatever Ridley Scott does. Trailer looked all right. Looked like Lady Gaga was giving a good performance. Uh, as far as I guess it wasn't like one of my most anticipated movies of the year, but it looked like it could be an interesting movie enough. Could get Lady Gaga her second Oscar nomination. And overall, this movie is, ugh. This movie is, it's not a train wreck by any means. It's just not good enough. Like, it's not good enough to be considered good, and it's not bad enough to be considered so good it's bad. It's just somewhere in the middle. This movie just exists in a weird space where it's neither so good it's great, and not so bad it's entertainingly bad. It's just somewhere in this space of just what the. Yeah, it's just a weird movie overall. So, what do I like? Honestly, the only things I like in this movie are Lady Gaga, Adam Driver, and even a little bit of Jeremy Irons. They're the three best performers in the movie. Lady Gaga, I really liked her performance the most throughout the entire movie. Adam Driver is probably the only decent person in this movie, but then again, I just love Adam Driver no matter what he does. I thought he was really good. Jeremy Irons, he's not in the movie too much, but I kind of liked his performance. He was kind of cold and towards his family, and I thought he was really good in this movie as well for his few scenes. Also, the movie has a lot of great production design, and the soundtrack is decent at least. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's really all I liked about this movie. Pretty much everything else about this movie I didn't care for. Let's start off with the other actors. First off, Jared Leto. What were you thinking? What were you thinking? Now, some people actually really like his performance. I thought it was a bit too much. Like, I saw him in the trailer, and I'm like, no. Just no. It just looks ridiculous. I don't know what... I don't know what he was thinking. I guess, like, there's this whole thing where they're trying to say, oh, he is ahead of his time, and just kind of like, that's why he's weird and eccentric, and why he's not normal. And I'm like, no, this is just Jared Leto trying to be a dick. It just didn't work. It wasn't interesting. It was just laughable. That was the only thing in this movie that was laughably bad. I'm just amazed that Ridley Scott was just like, yeah, Jared, that's a good job. Let it slide. Also, Al Pacino and Salma Hayek, they're barely in this movie. Their performances aren't necessarily bad, but I mean, Al Pacino has a few good moments, but Salma Hayek is just thrown in this movie for no reason. I don't know why. Salma Hayek was just, there's just no point to her in this movie. Except, she is involved with what happens at the end of the movie. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But there's just nothing about her in this movie. There's like, oh, she talks to Lady Gaga's character a few times, and that's it. Nothing else. She could have been cut from this movie entirely. Would not have made a difference. And mainly this movie, the main issue is that it tries to do way too much. It tries to play like a tragedy, like a crime drama. They try to be all these different types of movies, and it never finds its identity. I kind of talked shit about Cruella earlier this year, and I'm looking back at that movie, I'm like, that movie wasn't great, but at least it knew what it was. It knew it wasn't that serious of a movie. It knew it was, it knew what it wanted to be. This movie just does not know. It tries to be everything, and so by the end, it just feels like nothing. It just didn't work. Meanwhile, Lady Gaga, I didn't really, like, even though her performance is really good, I feel like they didn't really explore anything with her character other than, just that she hates the way things are going. Her acting's good, but most of the characters are just one-dimensional, admittedly. It's not, I feel like for a movie like this, the characters needed to be very layered, very three-dimensional, and instead we get these 2D cardboard cutouts. So that just didn't work. Also, this movie is way, way, way too long. I kind of complained about that about Ridley Scott's last movie, The Last Duel, which that movie is much better than this one. And I complain about that movie because that movie was a bit too long. This movie is slightly longer than that. And it feels like torture at times. This movie is torture at times. I never thought I would say that about this movie. This was torture. Oh my god. And I honestly, like, thinking about it, it's like, this could have been, an interesting take on this story. Maybe it could have been like a female Scarface. Hell, you have Al Pacino in this movie. Why not? Pass the baton in a way. But it doesn't even try to do that. It just doesn't try to do anything. It just tries to be everything at once. Except a great character study. And it just falls flat. It's just a disaster. There are moments in this movie where I said, man, like, someone else should have just gotten in there and tried to make a movie out of this. I kind of thought to myself after watching this, I'm not trying to compare the two directors, obviously. I love Ridley Scott, even when he falters. But, like, I can only imagine, like, what someone like, say, Ryan Murphy would have done. I think he would have done amazing with this story, instead of doing stupid movies like The Prom, but whatever. But, man, this movie was a disaster at times. This movie is just... this movie's kind of a letdown. This movie's a real letdown. Even though, admittedly, some of the performances are really good, like Lady Gaga and Adam Driver and Jeremy Irons, and even though it looks great, and the music is really good, pretty much everything else about this movie is bad. The tone is bad, a lot of the performers are bad, it just didn't know what it wanted to be, the characters are just way too flat, and I just felt like, for a movie that, it could have been a lot more than it actually was. It could have tried to do all these things at once. And so, naturally, when none of them work, it just amounts to nothing. Going back to Ryan Murphy, it could have worked as a season of American Crime Story. I know this isn't an American Crime or whatever, but if it worked like a mini-series, it probably would have worked a lot better. You could have kept the original cast. You could have kept Jared Leto in his insane makeup. This was just weird. This was just an odd movie to sit through. I didn't like it. There are moments where it can be laughably bad. Like there's this one cut during a scene between Lady Gaga and Adam Driver where music is playing. Where a well-known composer has their music playing, and like all I'll say is it should have set the tone for the entire movie. It could have been so bad it's good, or so good it's great, and it just exists in this world where everything just kind of falls apart. Yeah, I didn't like House of Gucci. I really just didn't. And that's not even talking about the family's reaction to this movie. It's not even worth it. I'm going to give House of Gucci... I'll give it 2 out of 4 stars. Stream it. Again, some of the performances are really good. It's just know what you're getting into with this movie. Because it's either going to be one of those movies you're going to absolutely despise, or you may like it for how ridiculous it is, but there really isn't too much to say. That's pretty much it. So, what did you think of House of Gucci? I don't even have another question. This was just a weird one. Comment down below. Subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe. This was just weird.